We're glad you're here. We're going to start with a hymn, and the hymn is 313. 313, Near the Cross. And we're going to be singing the first and the last stanzas, first and fourth, and the hymn number is 313. Would you stand with me, please? Standing together, 313, first and last. Father in heaven, thank you for the cross of Jesus Christ. Thank you for the reality that he loves us and died for us. Thank you for the security we find in him. And now, Lord, as we have gathered together to pray, to spend a few minutes in the scriptures, we pray that you would guide and direct, and that this hour would be pleasing to you and beneficial to us. Thank you for your grace. In Jesus' name, amen. Please be seated. And a couple of quick announcements. This coming Sunday, the first Sunday of the month, we'll have communion in the evening service. So, oh, that's right. Thank you. Yeah, Lori reminds me that this particular month we do it on Easter Sunday, so it won't be this Sunday night. It's in 3 weeks on the 21st. So plan on that. There was something else. I think there's no other meetings this Sunday. But on your sheet, you'll see SFM registrations. So there are forms, and it's not really conveniently laid out. So what I do is I just circle the classes that you want, or put an X on it, or use a yellow highlighter or whatever. Put your name on it, and then put it in Renee's box. If you haven't done this already, it's time. It's time to do that. Registrations are coming in. And, one of the important jobs that Renee does for us is to look at all the different classes that have been signed up for, and then figure out, okay, there's 23 in this class, there's 9 in this class, and then she assigns rooms. And it's important because the bigger the room, the more the people. And so, if you don't sign up and then you just show up, sometimes what happens is you run out of chairs, or there's been a few times where it actually turns out there's, it's like standing room only. And so it's better if you say ahead of time, I'm going to this class, and we're hoping that everybody else, all our guests, do the same thing, because then we can plan, okay, the maximum number in this room will be 25. And so, obviously this room is the biggest, and then probably the second biggest is either downstairs or in the ministry center upstairs, the conference room, like that. So, if you haven't yet registered for electives for SFM, please do so and get it to Renee. Scott and Renee, I think, are going to be here this Sunday. So get it in their box. That would be very, very helpful. Feels like I'm forgetting another important announcement. Mary and Martha? NRBFC tomorrow and Friday. Mary and Martha Monday. Maybe that's what it is. Anyhow. read the bulletin. Okay. Okay. Tonight we are in Proverbs chapter 7. Proverbs chapter 7. Because the last section of chapter 6 that we did last week is very similar. And so remember that we're in introductory material, and a lot of it is about wisdom. A lot of it is about why you would want to search for wisdom, why wisdom is significant. And it's designed to teach us, hey, I want to be wise. I want to listen to God. I want to listen to my parents. I want to pay attention and kind of lean into God. But we also discover in this section, this introductory section, that wisdom is not merely smarts. It's not just intellect. It's not just information. There is a moral component to wisdom. And Solomon is he's already hit it twice in some detail, and this time he's going to hit it in even greater detail. There's a relationship between wisdom and staying clear of sexual immorality. And so we've seen it before. We saw it in chapter 5. We saw it in chapter 6. Both of those were kind of extended paragraphs. Chapter 7 is the longest one yet, and it's still about this topic of staying clear of sexual immorality. So let me read it for you. Proverbs chapter 7. My son, keep my words and treasure my commandments within you. Keep my commandments and live, and my teaching as the apple of your eye. Bind them on your fingers, write them on the tablet of your heart. Say to wisdom, you are my sister, and call understanding your intimate friend, that they may keep you from an adulteress, from the foreigner who flatters with her words. For at the window of my house I looked out through my lattice, and I saw among the naive and discerned among the youths a young man lacking sense, passing through the street near her corner. And he takes the way to her house in the twilight, in the evening, in the middle of the night, and in the darkness. And behold, a woman comes to meet him, dressed as a harlot and cunning of heart. She is boisterous and rebellious. Her feet do not remain at home. She is now in the streets, now in the squares, and lurks by every corner. So she seizes him and kisses him, and with a brazen face she says to him, I was due to offer peace offerings. Today I have paid my vows. Therefore I have come out to meet you, to seek your presence earnestly, and I have found you. I have spread my couch with coverings, with colored linens of Egypt. I have sprinkled my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Come, let us drink our fill of love until morning. Let us delight ourselves with caresses. For my husband is not at home. He has gone on a long journey. He has taken a bag of money with him. At the full moon he will come home. With her many persuasions she entices him. With her flattering lips she seduces him. Suddenly he follows her as an ox goes to the slaughter, or as one in fetters to the discipline of a fool, until an arrow pierces through his liver. As a bird hastens to the snare, so he does not know that it will cost him his life. Now therefore, my sons, listen to me, and pay attention to the words of my mouth. Do not let your heart turn aside to her ways. Do not stray into her paths. For many are the victims she has cast down, and numerous are all her slain. Her house is a way to Sheol, descending to the chambers of death. Quite a description, isn't that? That is really something. So you can see the general tenor of wisdom as something that is beautiful, that it's helpful, that it's good. In the first couple of verses, a lot of the similar language that we've seen before. My son, keep my words, treasure my commandments, keep my commandments and live. So again, there's this exhortation. Pay attention to me, and value exhortation and teaching and instruction. Make it something that's worthwhile to you. Look for it. Esteem wisdom. And then at the end of verse 2, kind of an interesting, I'm not even sure what to call it. It's a cultural adaptation or something like that. The apple of your eye. And we even use that today. If something is the apple of your eye, what is it? It's very pleasurable. It's very precious to it. Very, very valuable. Somebody or something is the apple of your eye. Well, I don't remember what the Hebrew word is, but there's the translators of the Bible, the Old Testament, from Hebrew into English, made a mistake. There's a word for pupil, which means little gate or little opening, and that's the word for the eye, the pupil of the eye. But they mistakenly translated it as apple, and especially way back in the 1500s, 1600s, coming into English, there was no background, but they just translated an apple of the eye. It should have been gate of the eye or pupil of the eye. But ever since the Geneva Bible, and especially the King James Bible, now you sort of have to translate it like that because everybody expects to see it there. So, this is a case where the King James translation still influences us today. A more literal translation would be the gate of the eye, or the opening of the eye, or the pupil of the eye, meaning it's something that you guard. It's very important. Sorry? 2, verse 2. My teaching as the apple of your eye. What is yours?
It says, keep my commands and live, guard my teaching as you do your eyesight.
Okay. Well, the idea is there. Guard my teaching as your eyesight. So this elevation, this esteem, this high value on teaching and wisdom, bind them on your fingers, write them on the tablet of your heart. So we've seen this kind of language before, even last week. Like you're going to put them around your neck, and you're going to tie them to you, because they're going to guide you in how to live and how to think and how to handle problems. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Verse 4, say to wisdom, you are my sister. Now, what in the world is that? Well, it's a very close companion. So in a tight family unit, you even run across this a little bit in the Song of Solomon, where the husband says to his wife, you're my sister. And we say, well, that's really weird. Don't call her that. But no. It's saying we're the best friends. We're very close. And so here you're saying to wisdom, you're my sister. We're right next to each other. And call understanding your intimate friend. So again, wisdom, understanding, knowledge, this value on teaching and exhortation. But now Solomon is going to do what he's done. This will be the third time in some detail. He says, if you do this, if you have wisdom, if you have elevated wisdom in your mind and your heart to the point where it should be, then here is one of the benefits of having wisdom. In verse 5, that they may keep you from an adulteress. If you have genuine biblical wisdom, it is going to keep you from immorality. It's going to guard you from making a horrible, horrible mistake that could ruin your life. And so he is now going to paint a picture. And the picture is, he's sitting in his living room and looking out the window, and he sees across the street some young men. And he recognizes that they're pretty young and pretty inexperienced. He calls them naive in verse 7. So they're innocent. They don't have a lot of experience. And he's watching what happens, and what he sees happen is a seductress, an adulteress, gets her hooks in this man and is going to pull him. And so here's what he sees. He's passing through the street near her corner. He takes the way to her house. Now, it's not super clear whether he intends to do this, or he made a mistake and he got into the wrong part of town, or he's hanging out with a woman and he doesn't know what she's like, but very quickly it becomes obvious what she's trying to do. So, it starts out in the twilight or in the evening, but by the end of verse 9, it's now the middle of the night, and what is he doing out, and what is she doing out? In verse 10, behold, a woman comes to meet him, and now it's getting more obvious, dressed as a harlot. So there was a way of dressing as an immoral woman to attract customers, to attract people in the ancient world. It may not be like you'd think of in downtown Boston or downtown New York City today, but nonetheless, it would be very obvious in looking at this woman by her dress that she had very loose morals, or she was looking to attract customers. And she's characterized as boisterous, rebellious. Her feet do not remain at home. Interesting that Solomon would say that about her. What do you think that means? Her feet do not remain at home. She runs around. She is not content with the lot that God has given her to be a wife to her husband and to keep house and to do the things that a wife is supposed to do. She's not content with that. She wants to get out and move around. And so she does so. Verse 12, she's now in the streets, now in the squares, lurks by every corner. And now here's the attack. In verse 13, she seizes him, kisses him with a brazen face. Now I find verse 14 particularly repulsive. Why? Why do I find verse 14 so very disgusting? Yeah, she says, I was going to the temple to offer peace offerings. So it's a religious ceremony. So it'd be like an adulteress meeting somebody and say, oh, I was just in church. What are you talking about? What are you doing? So she says, I've just been to the temple and I've offered my peace offerings. And now she's going to commit adultery with this man. And she's the aggressor. She's the one that's hunting for him. Well, this is just disgusting. And Solomon intends it that way. You know, the picture that he's painting is of a woman who uses religion as an excuse. And so that's what's going on here. In verse 14, today I've paid my vows. Therefore I've come out to meet you to seek your presence earnestly, and I found you. And now she says, I've made my house very attractive and it's beautiful. Let's drink our fill of love until morning. And then it gets, verse 19 is also, isn't that a horrible betrayal? It's just awful. It's terrible. My husband is not at home. He is gone on a long journey. And she mentions that he's taken a bag of money with him. Why would her husband have a bag of money with him? Yeah, he's on a business trip. He's probably on a business trip. He's gone to a different city, or he's buying some cows or sheep or whatever. So he's got a bag of money and he's going to conduct business. But now she says he's gone for a long time, so we're safe. So come to my house. He's coming home at the full moon. And with her many persuasions, she entices him. And an individual who is being seduced, and this would hold true, actually, not just for sexual immorality, it would hold true for all kinds of temptations. A person who is making provision for the flesh is actually looking for ways to make excuses. They're actually looking for, how can I justify this? How could I put myself in a position where it feels like the only thing to do is to give in? See what I'm saying? So this guy he's willingly participating. See, at any point, she has been the aggressor. The woman is the adulterer. She's come hunting for him. But now he's responding to it. And he's being persuaded by all these different mechanisms that she's using. And it feels to him like, if something feels so good, how could it be bad? Does God ever put us in a position where the only way out is to sin? How do you know that? There's a verse. There is no temptation but such as is common to man, and with every temptation, God has also given us a way of escape. There is no excuse for sin. And if we give in, it's because we chose to give in. We decided to do it. And that's true not just for sexual immorality, that's true for everything. We chose to give in. And so that's what's going on. With her many persuasions, she entices him. With her flattering lips, she seduces him. And now verse 22, here's the crux. Here's the crisis point. Suddenly he follows her, as an ox goes to the slaughter, as one in fetters to the discipline of a fool. Now the imagery has just shifted. Because if you go back a little bit, you get a picture of this beautiful woman, and she's dressed a certain way, and she's talking about how lovely her home is, and I've got these expensive Egyptian cloths on my couch, and it smells nice, and the picture of luxury and ease and pleasure. But all of a sudden, in the middle of verse 22, the imagery shifts. Where are you now? Have you ever walked into a butcher shop? You know the smell? Remember the smell? Was it nice? Was that a nice smell in the butcher shop? We stopped at one a couple. They were supposed to have really good roast beef, and this was over in Freiburg a couple years ago. That new one that opened up, and then they closed up a little while later. So I love roast beef. So we're coming back from, I forget now, a hospital call in Portland or something. Lori was with me. And we went in, and that smell just strikes you. And Lori says, I think I'll wait in the car. Oh, yeah. That's pretty nice, isn't it? Yeah, that's pretty powerful. Sure, yeah. Or, in hunting season, I grew up in a hunting family, so you shoot a deer, and in my home, my dad, mom, the place where you butchered the deer and processed it was the kitchen table. That's just what you did. And so the smell of meat and, well, the picture a minute ago, cinnamon and aloes and expensive Egyptian cloth, and it's beautiful, and there's soft music playing, and now all of a sudden you're in a slaughterhouse and the smell is of meat. Solomon did that deliberately. He did it on purpose. You're looking at this picture, and it's everything pleasurable, everything enjoyable, everything nice. I want it so badly. And when you open the door, the picture is of pieces of meat hanging from the ceiling, and the smell of blood and organs getting into your nostrils. Why? Because that is the reality of what this is. This sin, it looks so good from the outside. What it really is, it's a meat house. It is a terrible, awful, horrible thing. And Solomon is showing us the reality of what this really is. It looks so wonderful. The world paints it in such glorious colors. On every billboard, in every magazine, on every television show, we're saturated with it. It's all around us all the time. And what the world shows us is, oh, it's good. Do what you feel like. Be free. Don't be bound by old-fashioned things like marriage vows. Do what you want. That's what the world tells us. And the reality is, well, the reality gets even more clear. Verse 23, until an arrow pierces through his liver. Now what's the picture? All right, liver is your organ, and death. He's in an ambush. He just got killed in an ambush. He wasn't expecting it, and somebody shot him. And it's like a bird who's hastening to the snare. The bird is running into the trap. So he does not know that it'll cost him his life. And this has already been talked about back in chapter 6, that if a man is hungry and he steals a loaf of bread, people say, well, he was hungry. You can almost justify that. Now, when he gets caught, he has to pay reparations fivefold, and it's going to cost him everything he's got. And so Solomon says, you can almost justify a guy who steals a loaf of bread because he's starving. But a man who commits adultery, is just a fool, because he's doing nothing but destroying his life. And that's this right here. So, verse 24, now Solomon is coming back into the picture as the tutor or the mentor or the teacher. He's painted this picture, and now he's stepping in to give the moral, to give the lesson. So, my sons, listen to me. Pay attention to the words of my mouth. Do not let your heart turn aside to her ways. Do not stray into her paths. That's kind of interesting. Think about this for a moment in verse 25, because there'd be a lot of people, including a lot of Christians, who would say, well, I can't help my affections. I can't help what I want. I want things, whether it's money or sex or popularity or stuff or whatever it might be. I want it and I can't help that. What do you think about that? Do you think that it's fair? Is it justifiable for a Christian to say, I can't help what I want? No, it's not fair. With the power of the Holy Spirit, it is possible to guard and to guide one's affections. It is possible to train oneself, and it is possible, even if temptation rises up in a very strong way, it is possible, in verse 25, to say, I see what that is, but I'm married. I made a decision, and I'm making a decision right now. That is not for me. I choose to turn my back on that and go the other way. Do not let your heart turn aside to her ways. Yes? Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, it's way more than possible. This is God's expectation. God expects his children to be holy. And in this particular area, well, you tell me, why is this such a big, there's a lot of reasons, but what is one big reason why keeping one's marriage vows is such a big deal? It's a picture of Christ in the church. It's a representation of Jesus Christ and his bride, the church. Is it, I mean, would Jesus ever go with somebody else? I mean, that's crazy. That's ludicrous. The picture doesn't even work. Of course he's faithful to us. And so, not only is this possible, not only is it plausible, but absolutely this is God's expectation. God expects Christians to turn their back on sexual immorality and walk the other way. And so do not let your heart turn aside to her ways. Do not stray into her paths. And now, I was saying a minute ago, the outside, the presentation, the seduction looks so beautiful, so pleasurable. It looks like it's going to fulfill all your desires. But when you open the door, you get the smell of raw meat. And you get the sight of sides of beef hanging on hooks. And now, here's even more of the reality. Look at verse 26. For many are the victims she has cast down, and numerous are all her slain. Her house is the way to Sheol, descending to the chambers of death. So she was telling him a minute ago, come to my house. My husband's away. He took a lot of money because he's got a big business trip, and he's not due back for a month. We got all kinds of time. It smells beautiful. I've got these luxurious coverings on my couch, and it's going to be wonderful. But when you open the door to her house, not only do you get the smell of meat, what else happens? What are you looking at? Verse 27. You're looking into the grave. There's a fresh dug grave in the ground with your name on it. If you walk into that door, you're walking to death. The house looks gorgeous. The house looks spectacular. She told you it's going to be so much fun. You're going to love it. We're going to have. And you open that door and you smell raw meat, and you look down and you see an open grave, and the headstone has your name on it. This kind of sin ruins lives. It destroys marriages. It devastates families. It rips apart churches. And Solomon, yeah, he's one to talk, right? Yeah, well, Solomon, in a moment of lucidity, is telling us what it's really like. Now, I think we did this last week, but let me take it to 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. And just show you this one thought that is a good reminder. 2 Timothy chapter 1, please look at verse 7. For God has not given us a spirit of timidity, but of power and love and discipline. A better translation for the word discipline is sound mind or healthy thinking. Christians have the ability, through the working of the Spirit of God and through the Scriptures, to see reality. We can see the truth. We can see life as it actually is, because God gives us that ability to see those things. So when the world says, hey, this is fun, this is great, try it out, you're going to love it, be reminded that the way the world presents something is 99.9% of the time the exact opposite of what it really is. And in this case, when you open the door to the adulteress's house, it is a meat house that leads to the grave. And that is the reality. That's what it really is. All the other stuff is just superficial showmanship. It's just a facade. It's not really what it is. What it really is horrific, awful sin. I've met a few people that have had adulterous affairs. And the wreckage goes on and on and on. The calamity, the damaged relationships, the heartache, the difficulties, it goes on and on and on. And when you think it's finally over and everything's patched up, and you find out, well, no, actually, we got a ways to go. And God is forgiving, God is gracious, and people can come back, and marriages can be repaired, and they can even do well. They can even, sometimes with God's grace, they can do better. But the sin is real. The heartache is real. So, why does Solomon talk about this so much? This is the third time now, in some detail and at some length, in the first 7 chapters of Proverbs, that he's gone into this.
Because he knows, when he was a young man, how easily it is to be led into this.
Yep.
He just wants to
It's part of human nature. The sex drive is built into us, and in marriage, it's a good thing. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. It's great. But it can be a doorway into sin. And the world and the devil take great advantage of that, and they twist it and turn it into something that God never intended it to be. And so Solomon is warning us, because all of us will face this. All of us will have temptations. All of us will have opportunities to go down this path if we want to. Any other questions, comments? Yes?
Writing this with a heavy heart and musty grip?
I don't know. You asked something like that last week too, about the timing of Solomon's writings, and the 3 books that Solomon is credited with writing are Proverbs, Song of Solomon, and Ecclesiastes. And typically, what is said is Song of Solomon was written when he's a young man, Proverbs middle-aged, and Ecclesiastes when he's older. You can't really prove that definitively just from the Scriptures. And furthermore, there is just a little, I ran across this just a week ago, there's a little bit of evidence that Solomon may not have written the Song of Solomon. There's just a little tiny bit of evidence that would suggest that. And that would put a whole different light on things. So, to answer your question, I don't know. I don't know if he's writing this saying, this was me and I got messed up. I kind of think that's not the tone here, at least. I think he's saying to a younger man than he, watch out, because this could happen to you. And I'm watching through the window and I'm seeing these young guys who don't know what's going on, and I'm concerned for them. So, all that to say, I don't know. Other questions, comments? Okay, take your prayer bulletins, please, and let me run over a few things with you. Cindy James